Arcaro has Nashua, the Derby winner, on the rail in this $100,000 match race for championship of 1955. Willie Shoemaker with Swaps. Now 2 lengths behind. Is Swaps done? Has Willie shot the bolt with the big red colt from California? No, here he comes again. The patient Willie's been biding his time. He's moving in. They're closing together. Who's going to take it, Swaps or Nashua?
Winner take all. The 1955 Thoroughbred Racing Championship. Swaps versus Nashua is the theme of our show on The Way It Was.
Every day are here again, our skies above are clear again, and sing a song of cheer again. Happy days are here again, all together shout it now.
Hi, I'm Kurt Gowdy. Welcome to our series of American Sports Classics. This week, the Sport of Kings, Thoroughbred Racing. And to help us relive these unforgettable racing moments, we're proud to have 2 immortals. The pilot of Nashua, the only jockey to ever win 2 Triple Crowns, Eddie Arcaro. And Swaps' jockey, he was only 23 years old in 1955, but was considered the greatest young rider in racing. 2 years earlier, he set an all-time record for wins in 1 year, 485. We're talking about Willie Shoemaker. And to help us recreate the 55 Triple Crown, take us down the paths of glory, one of the finest broadcasters of sports who has broadcast horse racing for more years, I think, that he wants to remember, Win Elliot. Win, you've seen a lot of great horses over the years. How would you rate these 2?
Well, they certainly have to cut among the best, with Citation and the likes of Kelso and Secretariat. These are truly what we call classic horses.
Well, how about setting the scene now? Let's start back. And we start back with the Kentucky Derby.
No, when you start back in the 2-year-old year where Nashua and Summertan had been it. And then Summertan got ill, dangerously ill, almost died, but they recovered. And Sherrill Ward, his trainer, brought him around. And so it was Nashua and Summertan coming into the Derby. Out on the coast, where Eastern horsemen didn't pay much attention in those days, was a thing called Swaps. He won the Santa Anita Derby. That got people a little excited. But as they came together in Louisville, it was Nashua, Summertan, and that thing from California.
So now let's go back to Churchill Downs, Kentucky. It's May 7th. And by the way, it's a birthday of our announcer, Win Elliot, but it's 1955.
Hello, sports fans. It's May 7th, Louisville, Kentucky, and we're approaching post time for the Run for the Roses, the 81st time the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs. Over 100,000 race fans have shown up to wager on who is going to take this biggest of all 3-year-old races, the richest Derby ever, 125,000. Of course, everybody wants to come to the race, and many of the famous make it. There's Arthur Godfrey. He thinks that William Woodward Jr.'s Nashua, the favorite, is going to be the first since Citation to win the Triple Crown. Oh, Irene Dunn. She is a Californian. She likes Rex Ellsworth's California bred. Swaps, that's her favorite. Bob Hope. He saw Summertan and Nashua race. He thinks Nashua is going to maintain his edge. As you can see, it's overcast, dark, and gloomy here in Louisville. That's where he got the cold. But the track on this 1.25-mile race is fast. There are going to be 10 of them try for the Derby. It's the smallest field since '48 when Coletown and Citation topped a field of 6. Blue Lamb, Racing Fool, Flying Fury, Nebezna, Honey's Alibi, Nashua, Trim Destiny, Swaps, Jeans Joe, and Summertan as the field. But most people think the race is going to be right here. That is number 5, William Woodward's Nashua with Eddie Arcaro. There's Willie Shoemaker, Mish Tenney, and Swaps, the California horse. The starter's got them all lined up. He presses the button, and here comes history. They're off. And in the middle of the track, that's Nashua and Trim Destiny braking smartly. Eddie Arcaro's got his kid right out there, but now he decides to take him back. And moving to the forefront is the horse from California with Willie Shoemaker in the darker of the silks. That is Swaps making his move. Number 7 as they come by the stands the first time. It's the Fleet Khaled colt who's got the measure of Trim Destiny on the inside. He gets ahead in front, and now free striding but under command. There goes Swaps around the first time with Trim Destiny, Nashua, and Summer Tan in that order. Arcaro, oh, there's Brian Field, who was watching the race, and the folks too, as everybody comes to his feet, as Willie and Swaps has the lead on the inside in the darker of the silks. Look at Eddie Arcaro on Nashua, pumping, urging, and pushing, and now he goes to the whip, trying to catch the California colt, but this looks like it's going to be Swaps and Willie Shoemaker's day. He begins to lengthen his stride. He's pulling away, and over 100,000 have realized this is the second time in Churchill Downs history a Californian wins the race. It Swaps, Nashua, followed by Summer Tan. And that's it, the Churchill Downs Kentucky Derby. And there he is, 23-year-old Willie Shoemaker, his first Derby win ever, the Derby winner of 1955, Swaps.
You're watching Classic Sports Network. Now, back to The Way It Was on Classic Sports Network.
Willie Shoemaker, you've had just about every thrill that could ever happen to a jockey. What was your feeling when you flashed across that wire with your first Derby victory?
I really couldn't believe it at the time. It was a great thrill for me. It was my first Derby win, and I'd ridden maybe 3 or 4 of them, but I really got a big thrill out of that because Nashua and Summer Tan were the big horses from the east, and we were from the west.
Eddie, that was the first defeat of the year for your horse, Nashua. He was a speed horse. Did you expect Swaps to set such a blistering pace?
Well, Nashua really wasn't a speed horse. He was any kind of horse. He was truly a great horse, but both of them were. What I did do, I really underestimated Swaps. I was never that far off of Swaps. I just thought I could go get him and run by him anytime I wanted to. Of course I didn't.
Willie, what was your racing plan, you and your trainer, Mesh Tenney?
Actually, he told me to take him back and lay second or third with him if I could, because he kind of liked to look around a lot when he got in front by himself. But I didn't. I had so much hold of him, I had to let him go to the lead, and everybody else was taking back at the same time, so I just let him go on the lead, and then he relaxed.
That's what I was going to ask you. Were you running a controlled pace insofar as a fast horse, if he's running within himself, is going to have plenty left when he gets to the stretch, and then no matter how good Eddie and his horse were, you still would have enough?
I had an easy lead all the way, and when Eddie came to me, my horse was looking around. I'd never really asked him to run.
What about the leather sole that Swaps wore on one of his forehoofs?
He had an infection in his foot, and he had a leather sole underneath the shoe. But he ran all right on it on a fast track. I think one day in the mud they worked him, and some mud had gotten up under there, and it had affected him somewhat. But
well, you've ridden a lot of horses since. How would you rate Swaps? Then I want to ask Eddie about Nashua. How would you rate Swaps as one of the horses?
Well, I think he was a great horse. He was probably as good a horse as I ever rode in my life.
And how about Nashua, Eddie? You rode, what, a whirl-away in Citation?
Well, I think Citation might drown him, and so would Kelso. But not ability-wise, by the way. Nashua had as much ability as any horse that ever lived, but he didn't have the will that the other 2 horses that I mentioned had. They would just give all out to win, and Nashua had a little of the Nazrul of blood, as we call it in racing, which was a little temperamental, and he really didn't give every day. Where the other 2 horses that I just mentioned, Citation gave everything every day, and so would Kelso. You know, I was Nashua's biggest knocker, and Mr. Fitzsimmons said to me one day, he says, I can't understand how you can keep knocking this horse. All he does is win. I said, but he's the type of a horse that would win by a neck or a half a length or whatever in some of his races, and you knew that if he would really give, he could run much faster.
Blow away with it.
Yep.
What has impressed me in Arcaro description of a great horse was a horse who moves so easily that you're not aware how fast he's going, because everything is going like a beautiful watch as of a piece. When he would work Citation in the morning, it would be difficult to anticipate what the fractions were. You'd have to really guess. Am I quoting you correctly,
I think
Ed?
any good horse is really hard to
rhythm.
judge time.
Yeah.
Great rhythm.
I think a
Time.
good story about that is the time you went to Chicago and worked Nashua in 5/8 of a mile, wasn't it?
Yeah, I worked in 5/8 a mile in 55 seconds, which is, you know, just
That wins.
unheard of. And when I came back off him, Mr. Fitz says, how much faster could he win? I said, oh, I guess 3 or 4 seconds. So, I was so far out of line.
Yeah,
It was,
yeah.
Why didn't Rex Ellsworth, the owner of Swaps, enter the horse in the Triple Derby? He had, I think, until February 15th to to make the nomination and pay a $250 fee. Did you ever get the story?
You mean a Triple Crown?
In the Triple
Preakness
Crown.
in the Belmont? I don't know. I think one of the reasons is that he was a California guy, and Hollywood Park had gotten him to bring the horse back and run him in a few races out here. You know, like the Hollywood Derby and the Gold Cup and whatever. But I was disappointed he didn't run him in the Preakness and the Belmont.
We'll return in just a moment to The Way It Was on Classic Sports Network.
Swaps goes back to California. In the meantime, Nashua keeps going in the Triple Crown. And let's go now to Maryland's Pimlico and then to New York's Belmont Park for the second and third jewels of the Triple Crown. And here's Harry Wismer and Win Elliot to describe it to us.
So Pimlico down in Baltimore, and more than 26,000 rally round for the second gem in racing's Triple Crown, the Preakness. 8 3-year-olds parade out for the race, and the odds-on favorite is Nashua, Belair Stud's fine colt. They're in the gate. And they're off for the mile and 3/16 trip. Coming past the stand, Saratoga, ridden by Nick Shuck, takes the lead. Honey's Alibi is second. Fleet Pass third, and Nashua, with Eddie Arcaro in the saddle, is fourth. Swaps, winner of the Kentucky Derby, is not entered. Going down the backstretch, still in the same order. Saratoga, Honey's Alibi, Fleet Path, and Nashua. But now, Nashua is starting to move. He rolls past Fleet Path and Honey's Alibi, and they drop back. Coming around the turn, Saratoga is still holding on to the lead by half a length. He gave Nashua a real battle in the Florida Derby, and he's giving the Belair colt another one in this Preakness. Out of the turn into the stretch. That's Saratoga on the inside, with Nashua trying to pass him. Dueling down the stretch, Saratoga gives ground grudgingly, but Nashua gains inch by inch and hits the wire winner by a length. For Nashua, a big one, and a purse over $67,000.
And so here we are in the middle of June. Win Elliot back with you again to Old Belmont for the third and most testing leg of the Triple Crown, the 1.5 mile Belmont Stakes. They like to call it the Test of Champions. And there's the horse everybody thinks is going to be the champion on this dull, rainy day. And he gets out of the gate smartly as usual. Eddie Arcaro and William Woodward's Nashua. That's he, number 6 with the Bel Air colors. Eddie takes a quick look over his shoulder on the left to see what the rest of the field is going to do. He knows this is a 1.5 miles. He knows you can't really get shot out, that class has got to tell on a race this long. He's taken him back a little. That's he on the outside. He's now rounding the field. If you can spot the white with the dots. Eddie Arcaro on Nashua. He's got his eyes on the top, and there's a fella's got his eyes on the winner's window. And it's going to be Nashua. Look at him stretch it out. He's got a 6-length lead now. Eddie checks the rest of the field as he pulls away 7 lengths, 8 lengths, and just about 9 lengths as William Woodward's Nashua with Eddie Arcaro goes over the Belmont finish line, the winner. Nashua, Blazing Comp, Portersville, Jabna, Flying Fury, Mr. LL, and Ratamero of the King Ranch. And there it is, Eddie Arcaro and Nashua, the Belmont winners of 1955.
Well, 2 outstanding wins for you, Eddie, the Preakness and Belmont. When you won the Preakness aboard Nashua, that was a new track record. The surprise horse was Saratoga. We'd like to replay that race and have you take us along and tell it the way it was as Saratoga pushed Nashua. So let's go back now to the Preakness that year of the Triple Crown.
Well, he ran up Saratoga, by the way, wasn't all that great a horse. And this is what I was trying to explain to you a little while ago, that if you see Nashua right now, he has his ears pinned right back on his neck, and he was going to win all right, but he really should have beat a horse like that further than he did, had he have been the type of a horse that would go on, which he wasn't.
You won, but were you disappointed in Nashua that day?
Well, he never disappointed collecting $67,000.
No.
But he never gave you the confidence that he was going to give all. That's what I was, That's what I'm trying to say.
2 days after Nashua won the Preakness, you were aboard Swaps in the Will Rogers Stakes at Hollywood Park, but you must have had a strong feeling inside you, Willie Shoemaker, that you weren't back there running Swaps in the Preakness in the second leg of the Triple Crown.
Well, as I said before, I was disappointed he didn't run the horse in these 2 races, but I might have been more disappointed had he run him. He might have beaten him, you know, so who knows what would have
And on that very day that Nashua won at Belmont by 9 lengths, roaring away with Eddie aboard, Swaps broke the world record at Hollywood Park. What was your thinking then?
Well, the two different kind of racetracks, actually. In Belmont Park's a sandy, deep track, and Hollywood was a fast track. So the time, you could not compare the times at different tracks because of their conditions.
You're watching Back to the Way It Was on Classics.
Here we are now. Arcaro's won at the Preakness in Belmont after losing the Derby to Swaps.
Yeah.
Swaps has come back west, running great, setting world records, and now the talk starts. Let's
Yes,
have the match race, Swaps against Nashua. They say one man was a catalyst for this match race, the movie star, Don Amici. Was it
who
Don
invented the
Amici?
telephone and various other little
And he invented the
amenities.
match race.
Yes, well, he was in Chicago at the time, and Ben Lindheimer was alive. And as I said, a match race happens because you have the horses, you have the time, you have the place, and there's the money. It was the East against the West, as you remember, fellows. It was Fitzsimmons' classical training methods against the cowboy methods of Ellsworth and Tenney. It was the master against the newcomer, whom the master had already said was the greatest he's seen coming on. Everything came to fruition to bring the excitement to a fever pitch for that afternoon in Chicago.
And so we're going to Chicago's Washington Park, August 31st, 1955, for what they called the race of the century. And here to describe it to you is Win Elliot.
Here it is, the fall of the year, actually August, and the big question in racing circles is, which is the better of the 2-3-year-old heroic horses? Is it this one? Nashua with Al Robertson leading him off the train. This is the Eastern candidate for championship honors. He had won the Preakness and the Belmont. Or was it that brilliant red colt from California, Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons? Boy, what a trainer, and what a nice guy, always smiling, just as affable as he looks. Here's the red guy from California with Chester White, one of the stable boys on Swaps, the second horse to ever win the Derby from California. Look at that beautiful stride. He's power personified, but so is Nashua. So, well, here's the Ellsworth family, and what a lovely morning to be out and watching a horse like this that comes along just once in a lifetime. The Midwest is what? All agog as they are preparing for the match race of the century, and they come scooting into Washington Park to see which of these 2 horses is going to do it. Not only is it East versus West, but it's the traditional training methods of Jim Fitzsimmons versus the cowboy approach to the racehorse Rex Ellsworth and Mish Tenney. Everybody who could get there was there. The day, nice and warm, and for the first time, the 2 horses, just to give everybody a chance to see them saddle, they're saddled in the infield, right out in front. Swaps, the big red guy, and then Nashua with his entourage. You can see that this happens to be Swaps. That's Rex Ellsworth in the dark suit, just turning to his left now. And here's Eddie Arcaro. Couldn't be a better jockey than old Banana Nose. And on one of his favorite Mazrula colts, he's got a lot to prove here today. And there's Willie Shoemaker, the little toy watch charm jockey, coming on with the cowboy horse Swaps. And now the big field tenses as everybody comes down to the inside rail as we approach a starting gate with a once-in-a-lifetime sight. Just 2 horses in there. Arcaro and Nashua on the inside, and the bell rings, and they're out of the gate. And look at Nashua, look at Eddie whip in that Belair stud horse to get him out front. Willie takes a look over his left, and they seem to be even as they come down the grandstand way at the first turn. But there is Nashua in full stride. He's got the lead now, a full length as they make that first turn. We understand the track is a little drier and faster on the inside, and that's where the old Master Eddie is taking his horse. But Willie's got lots of big red colt under him. Look at him start to come up now with those gorgeous little wrists of his. He's inching Swaps up. Now it's a half length. He's almost got him up to the head. But Eddie is not going to have any of that. Can Nashua hold him off? He's stretching out a little. Look at Eddie go into the pump as they go up the back stretch. And it's Nashua now lengthening out a half length, 3/4, and it's just about a full length lead now. as Belair studs Nashua with Eddie Arcaro sticking under the dry side of the track, has got 2 lengths of a lead on Swaps now, maybe 2.5. But Willie isn't done. Here he comes again. The big red coat from California is inching up. Gee, Eddie pulled away again. It's his cat and mouse. As Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons has got this Nashua colt in the greatest shape of his life. He's got a 2-length lead again. Eddie seems to be opening up. Is Swaps done? Has Willie shot the bolt? No, here they come again. 3/8 of a mile coming up. They're that close to home. Look at Willie drawing closer, closer, stride by stride. But Nashua seems to have enough. There goes Willie to the whip, left-handed. Eddie answers with the whip, both hands now. They're coming into the stretch. It looks like Nashua or Swaps begins to falter a little here, and now it looks like Eddie and Nashua have the day. Eddie and Nashua 4 lengths in the lead and pulling away. Eddie looked over his shoulders, couldn't find the California colt. He doesn't care now. He's going to keep Nashua about his business as he heads to the finish line, Washington Park. He's going to do it. Eddie, Arcaro, and Nashua, they beat Swaps in the match race of the century. East beats West. Eddie Arcaro takes the measure of Willie Shoemaker, and for this year, 1955, horse on this day, horse of the year, the Bel Air studs, Nashua.
We'll return in just a moment to The Way It Was on Classic Sports Network.
We've had a lot of famous athletes in this show. Baseball, football, all kinds of sports. And the remarkable thing to me, Win, as these 2 gentlemen have said here, Willie Shoemaker and Eddie Arcaro, I looked at their faces as this race was run, and I can see them going back in time, back to those very moments in 1955. Eddie, how'd you feel when you flashed across the finish line, the winner?
I felt pretty good. I was naturally built up for the race. But I think anybody would have felt good. It's you know, it's the build-up, and you've got the adrenaline going, and they had built it up east against west, and of course, Swaps having a decision against Nashua, it was a thing, really, quite a thing.
I'll swear, when those starting gates broke, that I heard a scream. They said you let out a scream and hit Nashua to come out of there. You wanted to get in a certain position in the track, did you?
Well, number one, I think going into the race, I was lucky enough to have drawn the best post position. It had rained, and that track, although it looked fast in the movies, it wasn't. It was a very deep track, and there was a path that was kind of where my stall was, and Bill had a lot the worst of it where he was. We both had the same idea, to try to get the lead and just go as far as you can, as fast as you can, and that's what it's all about. You knock each other out as fast as you can do it.
What was your feeling when the race was over, Willie?
Well, I knew that the best horse and the best rider won that race that day. This old master here gave me a hell of a riding lesson that day, I must say that.
Yeah.
You were the greatest of friends, fellas. How did that come into this race?
Well, no, I mean, you're out there to try to win. He was the same as I was. But I must say that I was surprised. I knew about what he was going to do, you know, in the beginning. But he left that gate whipping and slashing and hollering. He almost scared the hell out of me.
Were you surprised when Swaps always broke and went out in front?
Well, actually, Swaps didn't break that good. He kind of came out of the sideways a little bit
Right.
that day. But I don't think he would have outrun him going into the first turn no matter what happened.
Eddie, let's watch this great horse back in action again as you win this famous match race with Swaps, and I think we're going to pick it up here in the backstretch, and you tell us the way it really was there.
Well, as I said before, in a match race, you just run as fast as you've got to run. Try never to lose the lead. If you do, you're really trying to find out which horse is really the best. And this is the only way I know how you test them. Just let them run as fast as they can and as far as they can. And of course, these horses, by the way, ran through the first 3/4 of a mile in 9 4/5 seconds on one of the worst racetracks you've ever seen. It was a very deep, bad racetrack.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody had to give. It was just that simple. By the way, one part of this race, I was frightened. It'll be down in the stretch, of course. And when I drew away, Swaps evidently, and he did come back after that race hurting, didn't he, Bill?
Yes, he did.
He must have, something happened to him, and as you'll see here, when he dropped way back off of me and then ducked into the rail, I really thought Bill had fell. And you'll see me raise up and almost turn around because it scared me. I couldn't find him.
He's getting tired now, and you see him swerve in behind you here and duck right there, see it?
Yeah.
He's had it.
Well, there goes Nashua.
They see me look around, I couldn't find him.
Yeah.
Willie, the deep track didn't hurt, didn't help that padded foot any, did it?
Oh, it didn't help it, but I don't, as I say again, had it been a fast track or whatever it might have been, I don't think that day he could have beaten Nashua the way he ran.
Eddie, by the end of 55, Nashua had won $250,000. That was a record in those days. What happened to him after that?
Well, as a 4-year-old, he got very mean. This was his 3-year-old year, and in fact, in the middle of the summer, they retired him.
And he got
would
mean?
get in the starting gate, yes, got very studdish. He'd want to
like his old man,
fight
huh?
horses. Yes, the Nazrule would start coming
Yeah.
out on him. Really.
And what happened to Swaps when he went back to the West Coast, Willie?
Well, he won some races after that. He won the Gold Cup, and he carried 130 pounds. In fact, one race I rode him later, I think in Chicago, the next year against Summer 10. Eddie happened to ride Summer 10 that day, and I had 130, Swaps did, and he had 115, I believe, or
Right.
16. And he ran by Summer 10 like he was tied to the fence that day.
In that particular race, I was in front, and they ran the first 3/4 of a mile in 7 4/5 seconds, going a flat mile. And I thought I had a little hold on my horse, and I looked on the outside, and Shoemaker had Swaps bent double.
Wow.
That's how fast Swaps was really a good
Didn't he
horse.
run that mile in 33 and something?
33 and 1 or 2, I think it was.
Wasn't that a record at that time?
I think it was, yes.
Yeah. But before we finish, since I've worked with these guys through the years, and they are going to talk about themselves naturally, you're right when you say 2 of the greatest ever. And the guy on the left, Eddie, was strong, determined, motivated, intelligent. The other fellow there, his good younger friend, had maybe perhaps a little more finesse, a little gentler, thought his races, but like a champion in any sport, Kurt, as you found out as you've talked to them through the years, you never get to be a champion unless you got a head up there. And both these guys could see races as patterns. They could see how the field would open and what to do, whereas other fellows would just see horses running. They didn't look, they saw. And these are 2 of one of a kind. They're real champs.
You know something? I've got one of my weaknesses is I love to be around front runners and winners. And it's great to be with Arcaro and Shoemaker. And so that's it. We want to thank Eddie Arcaro, Willie Shoemaker, and Win Elliot. And so it was that Nashua was a better horse that day in Chicago. Which was really the greatest? Believe me, the controversy still rages because the 2 champions would never race again against each other. However, one thing that will never be disputed is that Eddie Arcaro and Willie Shoemaker are the greatest jockeys in thoroughbred racing history, and their names stand tall in racing's Hall of Fame. This is Kurt Gowdy saying, that's the way it was when Nashua beat Swaps in the race of the century.
Tonight on ESPN Classic Sports at 8, see The World of Jackie Stewart Part 1. Followed at 8:30 by the Buddy Baker story on Victory Lane. Then at 9, enjoy Irish Night at the Fights on Friday Night at the Fights. Only on ESPN Classic Sports.
You're watching Classic Sports Network. Once-in-a-lifetime moments, 24 hours a day.